Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
I'm here with two of my super pals. First, the man that is the greatest Smallville podcaster of all time, Frank Ramblings. How are you doing, Frank?
Hey, how you doing, buddy? It's good to be here.
I'm doing excellent. And the greatest teacher in the history of Hill Valley, in the history of all things throughout time, Mr. Tim Gannon. How are you doing, sir?
It was a big jump from Hill Valley to all time.
Yes, all time. Perfect things. All things come together and coalesce because I love talking to these two guys about Superman. And today we're going to talk about Superman Space Age. This comes to us from Mark Russell and Michael Allred. So I have a lot to say about this book, and I know my two super friends do as well. If you didn't know, you can catch these guys having an occasional beverage over at beerwithgeeks.com. They have a whole ton of, I would say they have a Kryptonian library full of audio content that you can consume over at Thought Bubble. Is it thoughtbubbleaudio.net?
.com.
.com, I'm sorry.
.com.
Thoughtbubbleaudio.com. I'll have all the links in the show notes. But they have recorded the like so much audio goodness they've given to the world. I'm just happy to have them here so that they can contribute to the Vactor-Verse. I am Vactor, if you didn't know, the host of the Vactor-Verse, where we talk about superheroes and Star Wars. And this week we're talking about superheroes, the greatest, perhaps the greatest superhero of all time, Superman. So I want to get into your experiences with this book, how it came to your attention, and then we'll get into your thoughts. So, Mr. Tim Gannon, let's start with you first. How did you first hear about Superman Space Age?
I think it was just one of those, like, because I read digitally. I'll read through Comixology, or I guess just Kindle now. But I think it just popped up in one of the, like, this book is new, but I really like Mark Russell's Flintstones.
Yes, yes.
And so I said, oh, I want to read this because I like the Space Age, I like Superman, and I like Mark Russell, and I like Michael Allred too. So it was like really just a good Venn diagram of like middle section for me.
Yes.
And so I think I read it before both of you guys too, right?
I believe that's true.
Yeah, okay. Because I read it again for this. This is my second time through it.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Man, I can't wait for my second reading of this. Unfortunately, because of small children, I don't have as much comic reading time as I used to. So I have to kind of plan out my reading. And specifically, usually it's for this podcast. But I had a chance to read this for the first time right before we started recording. But I want to get my man, Frank Ramblings. I want to get your experience with Superman Space Age. How did this come across your desk?
Yeah, this came across my desk. I heard about it from Tim, and was because similar small children also keeping me from reading as much as I would like. And honestly, it's been a while since I've been current on what's going on in comics today.
Yes.
But I try to catch the events or good shorter stories as they come along, and this one sounded amazing. And also, yes, I read it for our conversation today, and boy, am I glad we picked this.
I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk to you boys because I, I also, the last time you joined me here in the Vactor-Verse, we talked about My Adventures with Superman, the Superman anime. And I was thinking about it today how this book is like one of those, like My Adventures with Superman, like reimaginings of Superman that we get every couple years that kind of you're looking at the same thing that we've loved for so many years, but from a different angle, a different perspective. And there are comics that come along every couple years, every once in a decade, I should say, that we just, man, like Superman for All Seasons is like one of those books where I'm like, I just look back at it and say, I love this perspective. One day we need to talk about Superman for All Seasons because I think Tim, we were chatting in our group chat that we have, and we were talking about my like favorite Superman stories of all time. And for me, For All Seasons is one of those ones that just genre defining, generation defining. And this book, Superman Space Age, I think is also going to be one of those ones that I look back on. Like, it feels like it's already timeless. It just came out last year. We're already in 2024 as we record this, but this book just came out. It was 3 books that were released and combined into this. And I'll tell you real quick, my first I guess the way that it came across my understanding was Michael Allred. His art immediately stands out to me. So when I saw that first book get released, and there was that first image, the cover image of Superman holding the world, basically, and I said, "Whoa, Michael Allred on Superman! I love these are 2 great tastes that taste great together." So I said, I got to jump in on this, and I was not disappointed. Um, I guess since Tim, you were the first to read it and you've read it the most, can you give us a small synopsis? Like, what is this book about? Superman Space Age.
Sure. The book is about the life of Superman if he landed in Kansas in the 1940s, post World War II, and he emerges as Superman just after the assassination of JFK. And it pretty much takes us through about 20 years of Superman's existence on the Earth that he's in. But he experiences like events, I guess, like world events. And so there's stuff that so it's JFK assassination, it's the Cold War, it's Watergate, and all these things. And you're viewing it through his lens as Clark the reporter and also as Superman the outsider. And I don't know, are we going full spoilers on
Yes,
this
let's
way?
go right off the bat. Full spoilers. If you haven't read it, we already give our full recommendation for Superman Space Age, but let's get into spoilers right now.
Okay, so what I find this book did, what was interesting about this book that I haven't really seen others do, is that it is a story of a multiverse Earth before Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so it is the story of the death of an Earth by the Anti-Monitor before Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it's just in that way it's a bottle episode in a lot of ways. So
Right.
That's right.
it's a bottle of Candor episode, or something.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's very minute and minuscule because it is only centered on itself, but at the same time it's centered on the multiverse. And we get that as Clark, when he starts working at the Daily Planet, he takes over Lois's page, which is the Kooks and Cranks
Yes.
page. And he meets this guy named Pariah, who is the guy that witnesses the death of the multiverse in Crisis on Infinite, leading up to and the Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so he tells him, like, "Oh yeah, Earth's going to end in 20 years. See ya." And that just like sits with Clark for 20 or so years. And like, how do you live your life thinking that maybe it's going to end, maybe it's not going to end? You do not know the hour, except like he does know the hour, sort of like it's like 20-year mark.
Yeah.
And so that's fascinating that like you get attached to some rando Earth. Like it doesn't even have like it's not even like Earth 16 or whatever. It's Earth
Right.
like 6798771.z. Like it's just wildly out there, but it's almost like the humanity angle of a story. Like here's this war that's happening, so let me tell the individual story of this person who's struggling, right? And that's kind of what this is, and I find it fascinating from that perspective as an angle. That's just not doing, oh, it's Superman in the 60s. It's Superman on a very particular Earth before a very particular comic event, and so it's allowed to comment on comics and history at the same time. It was really, really, really good, really meta that way.
Yeah, and it's also, I feel like, a love letter, and this is why I love. First of all, I love you guys, but I love talking to you guys about Superman because I know you have the history behind it to back it up. And when I was reading this book, I felt like it was a love letter to the Donner Superman. It was something that it's a love letter to Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you have that knowledge of the event and the knowledge, and with real world history as well, if you have the knowledge of the events, you know, it kind of adds a deeper layer and a meaning to it. But let's say this is your first time, you didn't know about Watergate, if you didn't know about JFK, if you didn't know about Crisis on Infinite Earths, it works as a first time viewing, and it also works as, okay, I already know these events. I'm looking at it, like you said, from Superman's point of view. I'm looking at it from a different angle, and it adds another layer. And man, like I said, I cannot wait to reread this. I just finished it recently, and I can't wait to dive back into it again because it's one of those books that, like Superman for All Seasons, I think I'm gonna get something different out of it each time that I go back to it. Frank, as you were kind of going through it, are you Tim already mentioned the Flintstones comic. Did you get a chance to check out any of Mark Russell's other work? He also did the Snagglepuss comic, which is very highly praised as well. Have you read any of his other work?
This is my first Mark Russell piece, and I was going in sort of not knowing what to expect, but I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed the way he writes for Clark and Superman and Lois. That's really one of the most important things for me as a Superman fan when I'm reading a new story, especially if it's by a writer who I've never read their writing on these characters before. Nailing, Clark, Superman, and Lois is the most important thing for me usually. And if you can get that right, a lot of other things follow from that. And I really feel like the way that he writes Lois as this extremely competent, very much like the Margot Kidder, but maybe even, less of like the spelling errors and stuff, and more of the hard-nosed reporter. She's like a very accomplished reporter, right? In this,
right,
in this story too. So I love that, and I love just the heart that Clark has, and for both for his Smallville family, and also for his Kryptonian family. His interactions with Jor-El were really, really cool, and I just, once that stuff is right, a lot of other things follow. And I just loved the visuals of the story too.
Man, Michael Allred and his wife Laura Allred, like they have this art style that kind of anything you throw at them, that they are able to kind of change your perspective on it. And they're one of those that art teams that I love seeing, like iZombie and just anything that they've done together. I've loved. So when I said, like I said, that was what initially kind of hooked me in, was this is Michael Allred art on Superman. Like this is what his take on Superman is. So I was thrilled, and I was not disappointed. It just this art style is not like any other that are out there. You completely know Allred style as soon as you see it.
It reminds me of like clean Jack Kirby. That's like the best way to describe it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got a very distinctive blockiness to it. But it just, every character kind of pops out, like especially with her colors. Because she's the inker colorist, right? Or she's just
right.
Yeah. But there's just like there's a lot of continuity in color that she does, whether on like whether with his say so or not, I have no idea. Like so, like for instance, right at the beginning of the book, Lois is wearing like this hot pink-ish shirt and pants, but that's the same exact colored dress that Martha Kent is wearing when we meet her. So there's a nice like continuity of like women in Clark's life in some way, almost like this like Clark learned what he liked and didn't like from his mom, as many people do, right?
Yes.
Like how to act and not how to act from his father. And so in a lot of ways, like they're commenting on the kind of person that Lois is and the kind of person that Clark seeks out because of being raised by his parents. And like that, it just a visual cue is all that it takes to tell you that. It's great.
Yeah, and All Red Style has always been to me that like 50s, 60s pop art style that it fits so perfectly, and that the time period that this is set in, it just kind of brings back that nostalgia. Even though I was not alive in that period, but it just kind of makes me feel like I get in the mood. I am not an eternal time traveler as I once thought. I once projected myself to be, but I really enjoyed this melding of the two. And Tim, I was also surprised that there's like a stealth Batman story in here. It's not advertised. It's Superman, space age, but then there's a whole separate Bruce Wayne Batman story that is not even tied to Superman. Because when he first shows up, I'm thinking, okay, how is he going to play off of Superman? But you could even look at that as his own separate arc that has nothing to do with Superman. So, what did you think? As you and I both did a Batman podcast at one point in our lives, what did you think about the Batman element in here?
I like it very much, not just because there's a Batman in the 60s, 70s, and 80s element to it, and the way that it addresses kind of 80s corporate mongering, like the birth of big business, and fight against that, and like in a world in which like you don't have to like be beholden to a lot of like you don't have to basically keep anything because the world's going to end anyway, so you can kind of do whatever you want. And I feel like that works strongly in Batman's favor in this story. But I do like that it is a stealth Batman story because Batman stories are stealthy because Batman is stealthy. But it is purely in to complement like the way that Superman lives his life, right? Because we get early on like the comment from Pa Kent where he says "save it quick" or "save it right," where like Clark wants to go off and save everything, and then he goes back. He's like, "No, Pa, you were right. I got to take my time." But he then basically only does quick fixes, which is really what the story is addressing, like how to be a hero in totality as opposed to like in spurts. And I think that Bruce's story or Batman's story is also addressing that fix it quick or fix it right, but he just can't. He has to do it from the human angle, instead of the alien angle or the superhuman angle. And I liked that fix it quick or fix it right is also they talk about this in the book, but it's the train track conundrum. Like you have 5 people on one track and then the guy who runs it on the other, and like, do you kill one guy with the train or do you kill the 5 innocent people? And it's the Batman Superman philosophy of which way do you go. And they address that in the story. Like Batman says, like, of course you kill the one guy to save the 5, and Superman says you try to save everybody, and if you can't, at least you're the kind of guy that does try to save everybody. And but when they both die, or when their final heroic acts, Batman's is the save the one, right? Even if it kills you, and Superman's is save the all, as many as you can, even if you can't save everybody. So they totally fulfill out their different philosophies through the story. And I like that because at a really like low, like kind of generalized point, that's how everybody is. Either you go this way on the track or you go this way on the track. You're either Superman or you're Batman. And the story, like, it says that there's a merit to being both types of people. like to both types of heroes. It doesn't condemn one or over the other. It doesn't really even make a final judgment on their actions, because at the end they're both heroic the best way that they know how to be. And I think that's just like lovely for both. And even for Lex Luthor fans who like Lex Luthor technically wins and then loses anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
I have a friend who Lex Luthor's like his favorite comic book character of all time. It's like super, like Lex Luthor's like Lex is the guy. And so I just love that for him. He gets like a story where like Lex wins but still loses.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, man. And the things that you touched on, this is why I want to go back and reread this. There were so many quotes in here. It was so quotable. And I like a bad podcaster, I did not take notes as I was reading this. I was trying to kind of complete it for this episode because we had kind of a hard deadline. But there were so many ideas that I want to go back to, and there were so many quotes that like I felt like were profound. And I said, man, that's something I need to take this in again. I need to ingest this again. And the needs of the many versus the needs of the few, all of those type of ideas are.
If I may interject myself for one moment,
like please.
Once you know the end, like you know that he's going to save as many people as he can, bottle them up, and send them to an Earth that is untouched and can restart. I mean, sadly, in some way, also to just like inevitably disappear anyway because everything gets smushed into crisis. But it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about that part.
No, it's fine.
But when Clark like meets Jor-El and everything, he asks like how am I supposed to save the world? It's such a complete mess. How am I supposed to save everybody? And Jor-El says, nobody saves the world. The best you can hope to do is help people survive it. And that is also like, so it's save it quick or save it right from one dad, and help people survive as best you can, and put your hands together and you get Superman.
Yeah.
And it is like that. Without both Pa and Jor-El, you don't get Superman. Like you need both of their philosophies for him to be complete. And on top of that, like if you know the end, you can. It's like all of like it's like a mystery. Like all the foreshadowing is right there in like what is inevitably going to be his final decision and how to save the entire world.
Yeah, man. And there's so much to unpack. And even in the Pa Kent storyline, like as far as I remember, you two may have more background knowledge than I do, but I don't remember seeing Pa Kent's either his war journals or like anything before the farm, anything before discovering baby Kal-El. I don't remember any storylines of showing a younger Pa Kent. And this scene, you know, when he's in the war and how that changes him, like it, I love the impact of the experiences on the man, and then what he passes down to his son. And then, man, Tim, even when you were speaking just now, it made me think of the parallels of this Superman becoming the Jor-El and passing along his one, like, although he's saving everybody, saving all of Krypton's knowledge and passing it on to Kal-El. And then now Kal-El's taking all of Earth's knowledge and then passing it along. I love these parallels. I love the continuity between these ideas. Frank,
it was even interesting before you go to. Sorry, Frank, I want to cut you off. Before
you're good. You're good.
I think like Superman chooses to save everybody by preserving them, but he does that by saving everybody. Because like his thing is like, I'm gonna cure every disease. You do it, it's free. It's like universal health care at its finest. And like like they don't even know that's them saving that they don't even know that's him preserving them.
Right.
So he's like saving them like willingly
twice.
And like unknown twice. He's saving them twice.
Yes.
And that's like something that like it's like almost like one for Pa and one for Jor-El, in some ways, like save it quick or save it right. Save everybody on Earth at that moment, and then preserve everybody the Jor-El style of saving everybody.
Right.
But I lost my train of thought, so go ahead and ask Frank.
Yeah, I love that recurring joke of the, I stopped that asteroid that one time. Remember that? Like that over and over again just made me laugh. And the humor of the book, as well as kind of the insight into humanity, was another thing that I kind of loved. And that very much felt like a Grant Morrison, like there's like shades of All-Star Superman to me in this as well, of like that idea of curing everyone and using his super intelligence, which is one of my, I might have said this in another podcast before, but one of my most like criminally underused superpowers to me is super intelligence. And when I was always growing up, I always thought of Superman as like one of the smartest characters in DC, and I don't ever see him portrayed as that. So anytime I see him showing off his intelligence, I'm like, yeah, that's Superman right there. That's the guy that I love. But Frank, was there anything like any motifs in this that you really enjoyed or picked up on that kind of stood out to you as like, oh yeah, that's not something I would have thought of coming into this book? Like my expectations of Space Age, like just the title Space Age.
Space Age, so I kept thinking it was called Superman Silver Age. Like that was how it was lodged in my brain. So I went
that makes
in,
more sense.
Right. Well, yeah, right. I guess that's why my brain just sort of replaced that the word.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be like a Silver Age tale, which I guess it kind of, starts in the Silver Age.
Yes.
But yeah, I went in with that expectation. But I throughout this, the whole story, I was picking up lots of references to things from throughout like Superman history, and that those are the things that I'm always looking for, right? You mentioned how we had like Superman 78 overtones, right? I mean, the fortress has the crystal structure and everything. Perry White's office at one point, it was towards the beginning, I think it's when Clark takes over the Kooks and Cranks column. Perry White's office is a replica of the office from the Adventures of Superman TV show. That's such a hyper specific, like that has to be on purpose because it is oddly specific. But those things carry throughout. I love seeing those things pop up. I love the humor. It's a funny, like it touches on some really serious and meaningful themes, but it's also a funny story, and the characters are funny, and things like I just saved the Earth from an asteroid, like that popping up over and over again, the way that Lois and Clark sort of banter. I really. I love the way that they use humor, even the sort of ironic, like, oh, he says we're about to be invaded by a bunch of insects or something, and then it's the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yes.
I even like the twist on the oh, Lois, I'm Superman. She's like, yeah, I know, I'm the reporter that broke Watergate. Like,
so good, right?
Yes. And that gave me, I sent you both kind of a preview of the thumbnail art that I'm going to use in here. And it gave me very much Forrest Gump vibes at the beginning of kind of these miraculous like events, like all of these things are happening. And we all have the knowledge of the future and say, oh yeah, that's this huge event. Well, while they're going through it, they don't know that's going to be, oh, Watergate. That's going to be all of these giant things. And I kept on thinking like, oh man, you placing Superman, this amazing character, into all of these events of our real world. And just like with Forrest Gump, that's what I thought when I first watched it, made it kind of captivating of, hey, he's just kind of a lowly guy and he's a ordinary man, but extraordinary things and events are happening to him. And so this is an extraordinary man and extraordinary things are happening to him. But I just really love that lens of seeing all of these things through that. And the Beatles thing, like that killed me when I put two and two together and it like clicked. Did you guys like the other portrayals of DC, popular DC characters like Brainiac or like I'm assuming it's Barry Allen Flash. They don't say anything that would make me think it's Wally West or any other Flash.
Well,
But
it's Pre-Crisis, so it would arguably.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right.
Barry.
That's right.
Bear.
Yes.
Right. I
Right.
mean, his costume was Barry's too, but
Yes.
yeah, the belt
Yeah,
was
there's a
not
bunch of those
jacket.
type of things. And I think this might be one of my new favorite Joker stories of all time. His kind of origin and the way that he becomes the Joker. I really love that, even the way he gets his scars and his element of chaos and how he has nothing that you can take from him. And there's nothing like that scene in The Dark Knight when he's trying to interrogate him and he's trying to use brute force, and there's nothing like Batman can do to get at the Joker. Like you have nothing, you have no leverage, you have nothing that you can hold up against him that he cares about. And this Joker was the same way. I love that. So I'll ask Tim first. Did you have any favorite DC other DC characters, this interpretation, or maybe even ones that you didn't like the Hal Jordan? Were there any other DC kind of characters that you picked up on in this?
Apart from we've already talked about Pa a little bit, but I really like
Yes.
Pa Kent
Yes.
in this. I mean, he's like almost quintessentially Pa, even like although he's kind of jokey in a way that Pa
Mhm.
isn't always jokey. Like when he's
Yes.
shucking corn and Clark's like, and he's
Yeah.
like, "What are you doing? Like, what are you doing?" Like, and Clark's like, "These are my work clothes." Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
But you said like it's like, it reminds you of Forrest Gump. It's just Clark being
Yes.
like,
Yes.
just Clark
Yes.
being like, used to say laughs like shucking corn. Like, you
Yeah.
never know what
Yeah.
porch you're gonna leave or something. So I
Yeah.
didn't truth, I didn't love Wonder Woman in this story. She feels kind of I can't there was some panel that I read. I should have saved it and I didn't, but I read it and I was like, that didn't feel right. That didn't feel like Diana to me. The rest of it is
Right.
good. Like, but you know, and she tells him like you don't fight fire with fire, you fight darkness with light, or
Yeah, I did
you
like
know,
that.
stuff
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
like stuff like that. I really liked. No, I don't really think there was anything because even Hal being so brash and being like, "No, sir, I think they're gonna fight first, and we have to fight back." Like, that's Hal to me. Like,
Yeah.
so there really wasn't. I mean, it's like army straight through and through. There really wasn't anybody in here that I kind of wrinkled my nose at, which is what I think. What you can take liberties with all these characters, and they still feel like themselves. Like Lex kind of doing a thing, killing millions of people, and then being like, I could probably get off. Like that was awesome. Like that was so Lex to me. Like, and then him just being like, you're a bunch of idiots. Like, I'm gonna do this myself. And no, it was all good. I think you're right about the Joker. Like I think the Joker in some ways, the Joker is more effective in other media because you can insert him for knowing that he may never return. Like you can cause like absolute awfulness, you know, and know that might never have to be topped by that character again. Like in the comics, he's always got to come back. He's going to one up himself, and it's a continuing story. But for this character, it like. This is the first time the Joker appeared, and it is clearly the worst thing that Batman's ever gone through. You know, and like because they're always like, "Oh, two sides of the same coin," blah blah blah. You know, like whatever things he says. But in this case, he is. It is like it's scarring and loss, and like the train track. Like you will I will do anything for. I will kill everybody on the train track, right? And it won't matter to him. You know, for Batman to be the opposite of that. But in this one, Batman is also like this agent of chaos in a way that he's not normally. Like he's like, I'm gonna blow up Wayne Enterprises.
Right. Yeah.
Blow
Yeah. I
it
was
up.
wondering where they were going with that. Was it just to kind of sow this seed of distrust in the public with Batman? Like I was trying to figure out what is the angle, and I don't know if that ever.
His angle is taking out the 1%, and there's no better example than to clear out your own first. I think that's what they were going for, because he's like, where Superman's fighting ideals, right? Batman is very concerned about the common people and like the socialism part of it, where like Superman used to be a socialist hero and Batman was a capitalist hero, right? That's the Grant Morrison thing, right? And so this is Batman fighting capitalism by fighting his own capitalism. It reminds me of the Year One scene where he like breaks into Falcone's dinner party and he's like, "Gentlemen, you've eaten well, you've eaten Gotham Spirit and so far." But in this case, he's like, instead of just scaring you, I am literally going to burn down the house that you're in to prove my point. My house, which is the Adam West '60s mansion.
It is, right?
Which was great. And so, I liked all of that very much. Also, Batman subtly just changing his costume through the entire, like every time he reappears, his costume is slightly different, and I loved that. Just just always tweaking.
Yeah. Frank, was there any DC characters that you kind of Pariah or any of those?
Pariah took me by complete surprise, right? So I loved that, and the whole crisis way that we went, like that was, I want to see that used some more. Like I want a Batman story about a Batman on another Earth, right? And I want them to explore that whole world, because there are so many fun stories you can tell that way.
Yes.
I would love to see them do this again. But I loved seeing, my two favorite Green Lanterns are Hal Jordan and John Stewart, and I got both of them in this story.
Yes.
So I was pretty thrilled with that. I was not expecting to have the Hall of Justice appear.
Oh yeah.
That was super fun. Not a character, but it's a character in its own way.
Right.
Just love that.
And that's what I'm saying of, I love talking to you both because I know you have the history and I know those references mean something to you, rather than if this was somebody's first ever Superman book, they can still enjoy it. But I think having the knowledge and the history of all these characters and various Superman stories, it just gives you that extra layer of depth. And I love having that.
Actually, I thought of somebody that I did not take to. Frank said it. You said John Stewart. And not that his characterization was wrong, but he wore a mask. And I very much dislike that. Because when you first meet John Stewart, he's like, I got nothing to hide. And he takes off the mask. And that's why he doesn't wear it. He's like, this is who I am. They're going to see me coming for who I am. It's a really powerful statement. And so it's odd that, like, it's 60s to 80s. You've got, you know what I mean? Like, everything from the 60s, 70s, and the 80s up until today about race. And he's wearing a mask. I just I did not take to that. That was probably the one bit of characterization where I thought it's like a really minor, in some ways it feels like a minor detail, but like I think it's such essential to his character to not wear a mask. So
it is kind of weird that he takes it off and there's no mention of it. There's no, like, it's like one of the last panels that you see of him and he's just like, all right, I'm in the background, and he's talking to Flash about, are you bored? Am I boring you? And he's putting together the ship in the bottle. And then the next panel, he's explaining the multiverse, and he's got the mask off, but they didn't make a big deal about it. So maybe that's another, like, if you know the background of the character, that's something that you can pick up on. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting the way that they did that. And I think for me, the Barry Allen, I felt like he was a little bit removed. Didn't feel as warm as I normally feel with Barry. He felt like, oh, everything is boring. Like, you guys are so slow, and I don't like. He didn't feel like he was affecting anything in the story. It was just, all right, I'm here to give Clark the inspiration for putting everybody in a glass, little tiny glass.
Well, isn't that affecting the story though?
Well.
And all the bombs on Brainiac's ship.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
she does have a major impact on the story.
Very subtle and in the background. I wanted it in my face. I wanted Barry Allen to be using the Speed Force, but this is a Superman story, so I understand. But yeah, this I think the entire encapsulation of this story is one that, like I said, I want to revisit this one often and come back to it. I think this is one of those ones I'm going to put on the shelf and just kind of revisit every so often, kind of like Watchmen, where it's like, all right, every time I come back to it, there's something new that I'm getting out of this. And I've had the other Mark Russell books in my library, but I have just, like I talked about, I just haven't had the time to get to them. I think I'm going to move them up on my list now. Flintstones and Snagglepuss in particular, because I grew up loving the Hanna-Barbera cartoons and characters. So those are going to be moved up on my list. And you know what? This is a Beer with Geeks collaboration, and I forgot to tell everyone I have two beers. One is a regular A&W root beer, and one is a zero sugar A&W root beer. And I got these specifically to drink with my Beer with Geeks friends, and I didn't even pour it in this episode. But I wanted to make a note that I did that. So, I could talk to both of you for hours about Superman, about DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, and we will talk for hours in the future. My son, I can hear him trying to get in the door, and I must attend to him. But I'm very happy that both of you were able to join me today. Thank you very much. Frank, can you tell the viewers and the listeners where we can hear your dulcet tones along with the booming voice of the Ganon?
Yeah, beerwithgeeks.com is the easiest way to find us.
Every week, I got to tell you guys, every week, I always tell you anyway, I text you whenever I'm listening to a new episode. It's just like I'm hanging out with my friends and we're all talking, even though I'm not participating in the conversation. I love hearing both of your thoughts on pop culture, religion, history, teaching, the world, education, humanity. I love hearing both of your thoughts. So everyone, if you loved what you heard in this episode, I want you to go over to beerwithgeeks.com and subscribe, listen. They've got a Patreon, everything you want to do to support these men. Do it, because Thought Bubble Audio is a fantastic company. Thank you very much, my friends, for joining us. Mr. Gannon, you get the last word on Superman Space Age. Somebody who has maybe not listened to anything we've said, they just fast forwarded to the end right now. Tell them why they should read Superman Space Age, Mr. Gannon. Tell us why.
Because there's a recurring motif that Clark just can't find a good glass of milk. And without ever talking about it, it says that he misses home.
Ooh,
and his
yes.
best way to get there is a good glass of milk. And so instead of a beer or even a root beer, why don't you go have yourself a glass of milk, Clark?